72 brawlers compete head-to-head on 5 increasingly difficult obstacle courses, but only one will walk away as this year's champion of Brawl Wars. We start the action off in bracket number 1 with a couple of play-in matches, and on the most simple of the courses where Grom places a perfect big bomb to break 2 walls and beat Sam, who has to run all the way around. In the other play-in match, Tick throws down his head to knock Colette back, but she takes it one step further and sends him reeling backwards as she easily strolls to victory. As we move to round 1, we see the same map as well as last year's champion Brock looking to continue his dominance, but Grom's star power gives him the extra speed at the start, coupled again with another perfect big bomb to break 2 walls. And last year's champion loses in the very first round. And unlike last year, this year, anything goes. No matter what super you have, you can use it. However, I have designed the maps so that you're going to need to be good in all areas, not just one, if you want to make it all the way. So while brawlers like Janet can fly over the terrain, it doesn't mean that that's going to work on every single map, but on this map, our newest brawler Pearl uses her super to destroy the wall en route to victory as Nita is forced to walk all the way around. Now, El Primo is always a favorite in these, and Colette has no chance of stopping him. While both Crow and Chester don't let the wall stop them, Crow is able to do it faster and moves on to the next round. Sandy slows down Surge with his gadgets, but it's not enough to stop him from clearing the wall and winning. The last matchup in this round, and we see the unreleased brawler Chuck making use of his Ghost Train gadget to pass through the wall and take down Barley in the process. And with that, we introduce a brand new map that's more complicated and has boxes to break open as well as skulls to clear. Now, the brawlers must break open the boxes before continuing on, and that is where we pick up with our first match, watching Grom splash them all. And while he doesn't get his big bomb to break the double walls, Gray can't break open the boxes fast enough. With that, Grom continues over the water and on his way to win this match. And speaking of water, Fang flies over it with ease, but then slows down on the boxes while Pearl makes quick work of them. Fang may have had the head start, but it's Pearl who finishes first to move on to round 3 to face Grom. Both El Primo and Crow start off by leaping over the water, but that's where Crow runs into his nemesis on these courses with the boxes. Primo, however, smashes them down with his fist and then leaves a spray of that fist at the finish line for Crow to see. Once again, Chuck makes great use of his super by landing that first post directly in the middle of those boxes, dealing some damage, but that damage gets amplified a moment later by his super as he finishes off the last one with one final shot. Surge, on the other hand, is slower to get it done, and as a result, Chuck moves on to face El Primo in the quarterfinals. Now we start that round off with Grom versus Pearl on a brand new map that focuses on movement and wall breaking. And after one wall break, Pearl has nothing left, but Grom decides to hold on to his super for that extra speed boost for the entire run. However, even with that, Pearl's able to edge him out and move on to face the winner of El Primo and Chuck. Now, Chuck can pass through all of these walls with his super and his gadget, but it doesn't matter because El Primo has a cheat code and just bypasses them all. A new round and a brand new map that emphasizes box breaking capabilities, and the winner of this match will move on to the final for this bracket to face off against the winner of the lower bracket. Now, both Pearl and El Primo are able to break the first wall and damage the boxes at the same time. Pearl picks up the extra cubes to help on the next set, while Primo doesn't even bother to wait around. While Pearl slowly whittles away at the boxes, Primo's already crossed the finish line and gives Pearl a sly smile. Now, he may have won the battle, but she makes him pay after that. And with that, Primo moves on to the semifinals to face the winner from bracket number 2. With the play-in matches on bracket 2, we start off with Byron and Amber. Amber has a movement speed boost, and Byron does not. I mean, do I really need to say any more? The other play-in match, we see Shelly and Lola face off. And now would be a good time to mention that Hypercharge was not allowed since not all brawlers have access to them, but Shelly shows that she doesn't need it as she dashes and blasts her way through the course and onto the first round. Our top seed Edgar is faced off against Amber, and yes, while Amber can move fast, she can't move over a wall, and Edgar absolutely torches her. Now in our next matchup, we have the pretty new brawler Cordelius squaring off against the brawler that no one wants to face against. Now straight away, they both use their supers, but in the Shadow Realm, Cord is able to use his gadget to get over Sprout's wall and never looks back as he finishes miles in front of Sprout. Up next, we see Buzz looking to grapple a wall to get that lead, but Lou has other plans as he immediately freezes him. After Buzz catches up with a long hook to the wall, he finds yet another ice patch in front of him, which is just enough to give Lou the photo finish at the line. Ems tries her best to slow down Bo, but his super, combined with Tripwire, is enough to send him over the line before her. And speaking of slows, in the next match, BB uses her slowing gadget on Shelly, but she returns the favor with a super of her own and then adds insult to injury as she builds up a second super, blasts through the wall, and onto the next round. In the next matchup, Eve is fully free to go over the water as much as she wants, but it doesn't help her on this map. However, since Terra's super takes longer to remove the wall and, well, Eve can just jump over it, she doesn't need her Jesus ability this time. Now, while Doug may not be able to walk on water, the dude walks with a swagger. Sadly, that swagger isn't enough to outrun Ash with his rage, and Doug has to take his swagger and head back home. And in the final match of round 1, we see Stu versus Gene. Now, Gene doesn't want Stu to run away, so he hooks him back. Now, there are no rules that say you have to finish in your lane, so Stu just keeps going, and Gene can't keep up. The first match of the next round, and we have Edgar versus Cordelius. Now, Cord isn't able to use his super on him as he quickly leaps away, and after smashing boxes, which is something that Cord can't do as fast, he uses another super and jumps the water, and while Cord can hop a wall, it's just not enough as he strolls up to see Edgar waiting for him. Now, Lou was able to freeze Buzz and defeat him, but here, Bo starts off with a super and a gadget to blow up all the boxes at once. That means that he can just stroll right past while Lou slowly breaks them open. This leads to a huge win for Bo. Shelly and Eve face off, and Eve floats over the water and starts working on those boxes. Now, Shelly's able to open them up faster. However, Eve moves past all of the obstacles, hops over a wall, and finishes way out in front. Now, our last match in this third round, we see Stu and Ash go at it. Stu gets an early lead with his dashes, but that rage is building up inside Ash and helps him destroy the boxes even faster while Stu struggles. Some more gadgets for Ash increases his speed while Stu goes as fast as he can. It's just not enough to beat Ash. Now in map 3 of round 4, Edgar and Bo face off. Bo has plans to take out one wall, but Edgar, well, he just skips them all and leaps over the water and destroys this map, as well as Bo's hopes of moving on. But if you thought that was easy, in the next round, Ash and Eve battle. Well, I'd call it a battle, but Eve just hops over the wall, but she does take a moment to taunt Ash before winning with ease. That means that the winner of the next match will move on to face El Primo in the semifinals. Now, while there is a ton of water on this map, which is great for Eve, there's also a ton of boxes, which is not. And it wasn't even close as Edgar absolutely destroys her and moves on to the semifinals. But who will they face? Well, let's move over to our third bracket and find out. Now, starting out at the top with the two play-in matches, we see Willow versus Buster. It doesn't take Willow long to show what she's good for, and she mind controls Buster back to the starting line. Now, he tries one last chance at the end to pull her back, but it's too late as Willow moves on. In our other match, Gale and Mandy leave the starting line. Gale tries to get a head start, but it doesn't amount to too much. He then slows Mandy down, hops over a wall, and then sends her back one last time before moving on to round 1 to face Nani. Now at the top of round 1, we see perennial favorite Colt lined up next to Willow. Willow pulls her tricks again, but Colt is able to blast through the wall and on to victory. Now the next two contestants both have to go around the walls, but thanks to Rico's star power, he does it much faster than Mr. P and wins the match. And faster is exactly how both of our next brawlers like to go about things. Mortis now has even more long dashes than ever before, and while Max is fast, it's not fast enough. And while those two like to go fast, the next two brawlers want to slow it down. Both Squeak and Bee make each other walk at a snail's pace. Eventually they free themselves, but Squeak has one last parting gift for Bee. I don't think she liked it. Now Nani is going to be able to cheese almost every single map, except for the fact Then on this first one, she's facing Gale, and he immediately knocks her out of her focus, and she is forced to run around while Gale hops over and moves on. Both Rosa and Belle can't bypass the wall, so they have to run around, and Rosa has the slight edge here. RT immediately goes into his split form where he is faster, but Carl and his flying hook gadgets are vastly superior and win with ease. And in the final match of the first round, it's 8-Bit versus Meg. Now, 8-Bit has never won one of these races, but today is his lucky day as he teleports past the wall, leaving slow Meg to run around. So on to our next map, we see Colt face off against Rico. Both get early damage on the boxes, unleashing those supers, but Colt is able to blast through the wall while Rico speedily runs around it. It's a close race, but in the end, Colt pulls ahead. In the next match, we see Squeak versus Mortis, and Mortis is out of the gate quicker than Squeak could slow him. Now, they both splash the boxes very well, but Mortis' speed leads up to a victory. Up next is Rosa versus Gale. Now, Gale immediately hops over the water to start breaking those boxes, and while Rosa breaks them faster, she can't jump over the walls and the water like Gale, so Gale moves on. So 8-Bit won a match, but against Carl, he just doesn't stand much of a chance at all. I think that he's happy with his one win, and Carl is happy to move on. Now, our next map is right in the wheelhouse for both of our competitors. Mortis moves around the walls with speed. Colt, however, just blasts them down and walks past. That is, except these last walls. All the competitors were instructed to view these box tiles as unbreakable walls. But even with all of that, Colt still ends up on top and will move on to face the winner of Gale versus Carl. Now, both of these brawlers immediately skip the first section, and while Gale is busy hopping over the walls, Carl is spinning and moving past them. It's a close race coming down to the very end, and both did well, but Gale comes out on top and will face Colt in the next map. Colt starts off with a big super that breaks walls and boxes. However, Gale slows him down with a stun against the water. But with Colt's superior DPS, he opens the boxes long before Gale and will face the winner of our last bracket. With our final bracket and our last two play-in matches, we see Maisie versus Ruffs and Piper versus Frank. Now, in the first match, Ruffs destroys the wall and Maisie's chances of moving on. But in the second match, both Piper and Frank deal with the wall in different ways, but Piper's is just much faster, giving her the win. In round 1 of bracket 4, Dynamite stuns Ruffs right out of the gate, and then after blowing up a wall, gives him one more just for good measure as he wins easily. Now, neither Poco or Spike can break walls, but Spike has a way to slow Poco down. Poco does gadget out of it, but it's enough to give Spike a narrow win. Jessie starts off the next match against Bull by slowing him down with her turret, but Bull quickly destroys it and then turns his attention to smashing that wall before moving on. Both Pam and Daryl have to make their way around the wall, but it only takes one roll to let Daryl pull ahead and win this one. Piper did well in her last match, but temporary flying is nothing compared to Janet just flying across the entire map as she wins with style. Now, Jackie has gadgets, but Bonnie has a super and she ain't afraid to use it as she launches herself into the next round. Now, in our next matchup, we see Hank and Otis. Hank is able to make use of his star power, gaining movement speed with his bubble to edge out Otis. And in the last match of the first round, Penny knocks Griff back at the start, but it's just not enough as he blows open the wall and walks through to victory. In round 2, Dynamite and Spike face off. Mike hops over the water straight away while Spike has to take the long way around. Now, both clear the boxes without any issues, but Dynamite's versatility getting over walls proves just to be too much for Spike. We did ask Spike for a comment, but he declined to answer. The two big bruisers, Bull and Daryl, face off in the next one, and both go over the water right away. Both of them take care of the boxes pretty quickly, and it looks like Bull has the edge coming into the home straight, but Daryl rolls across the water, beating him at the last second. The sibling grudge match is up next as we see Bonnie versus Janet. Now, both brawlers are off to a fast start, and both brawlers splash down the boxes fast, but then Janet activates her not-so-secret weapon and flies the rest of the way to victory, showing her little sister Bonnie up. Both Griff and Hank have to walk around at the start, and both handle the boxes well, but that gadget comes in handy for Griff and allows him to proceed to the next round to face off against Janet. But first, we're going to see Dynamite and Daryl face off. Now, while both competitors took off fast, Dynamite was able to spin, blow up, and jump over walls. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that last one. Even with that, Mike still gets the win over Daryl. And yeah, while all of our runs may not have been perfect, Oh, okay, there was actually some pretty good fails in there. We did try to make sure that both brawlers had really good runs before calling the race finished. However, there were no need for do-overs in the next match because as quick as it started, it ended. Janet took to the skies right away and landed on the other side for the win. So Dynamite versus Janet. Who is going to the final four? Now, Janet has relied on her flying to get this far, but this map was designed with something else in mind. And while she does break boxes well, Dynamite gets a stun in there to slow her down, but she quickly catches up, and in a photo finish, Mike crosses the finish line just before Janet does, meaning that Mike moves on to be one of the final four. So then, 4 brawlers remain, but only one will be crowned champion. Our first matchup is between El Primo and Edgar. Now, we went back to map number 2 because neither El Primo or Edgar can just cheese it by jumping over the center. They have to go back for the boxes. Straight away, we see both Edgar and El Primo leap the water to the boxes, and they both have very little trouble breaking them. El Primo, however, is now on foot for the rest of the way, yet Edgar has gadgets to help him. This is the deciding factor as Edgar edges out El Primo to move on to the championship match to face off against the winner of Colt versus Dynamite. Straight away out of the gate, Dynamite stuns Colt, throwing him off his step, and then quickly breaks boxes. Colt, having to run around the water, unleashes his super on the boxes, dealing massive damage. But while he's doing that, Dynamite's hopping over a wall on the other side. Colt breaks the wall and finishes off a last box, but Mike is so far out in front of him that this race ends in a runaway victory for Mike, which means that he moves on to the finals to face Edgar for the imaginary championship Brawl Wars trophy. In this last map, we will combine all the different aspects of the races: speed, wall breaking, box opening, and creativity. At the start, Edgar gets a quick lead by leaping over the initial walls, and while he chooses finesse, Mike chooses destruction by simply blowing them up before hopping over. After the boxes are blown up, Dynamite has made up ground as they both crisscross at the same time in a dead tie. Now, the next section is interesting as they have to take a jump pad to 3 more boxes, and then after destroying them, they must make a landing place for themselves and take a jump pad again. Well, that's what most brawlers would have to do, but not these two, as they find their very own shortcut and just jump to the middle. On the final home stretch, Mike rounds the corner just before Edgar and then taunts him with a stun, celebrating his victory, but Edgar won't stand for it, and he leaps over him. So then, who won?